Hello and welcome to the first and last episode of Sister Doctor Squared for 2024 and quite possibly the last episode forever. We're two sisters, two PhDs, relentlessly curious about too many things. Let's do this!
Well, blunt intro, Janine. We'll get to more on that soon, but first, as always, we acknowledge the Turrbal and Jagera people as the traditional owners of the land where we record Sister Doctor Squared. We live and work in Meanjin, and we pay our respects to all elders past and present and to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people listening to this episode. Yes, so Janine, thanks for that intro. Let's get right to the point. Let's just be honest. Listeners, if you've been paying attention, you might have noticed that we have not released an episode this entire year.
That's right. There's been no episodes for the year, and unfortunately there will be no actual scientific content for this episode either. We unfortunately are wrapping things up with the podcast. Maybe not forever, but definitely for now.
Yeah.
We're working a lot more, and this year it just became impossible to find the time to do a decent job. And there's been some health issues on and off as well. Aleena.
Yeah, and I'll take some of the responsibility for that, being a perfectionist as I am, and you know, Janine. You might not know this, listeners, but we actually put a lot of work into this show. A lot of time goes into it. And just this year, our work becoming quite busy. My business has become much busier.
Same with mine.
We don't have the time to put the same level of effort and care into it as I would insist, at least.
This is correct.
I can't do something without giving it my all, and I just can't give it my all anymore.
Yeah. So, this will just be a little mini episode essentially to say hi and bye, and we do have a little bit of fun content for you.
It's like a replacement for muck-up day. We can't do a muck-up day when we haven't actually given you a full year of episodes.
Yeah, that's right. It's like we've missed school all year and then we show up on the last day and have some fun. That's basically what we're doing.
That's what we're doing, yes. I like that. I like that a lot.
Okay, so the first item on our mini episode agenda, yes, I'm chairing and running the agenda as always. The first item is, Aleena, what is the biggest thing you learned through the podcast? Not just this year, because there was nothing. But for all of the years we've done this, we started this in 2019, so it's been 5 years of work.
Yeah, our first episode was in 2020, but we were working on it the year before, Yep. The biggest thing I've learnt is audio editing. Using audio recording software. I think one of the biggest things I learned in producing content, as they say, I don't want to call us content creators because that's a bit vomit, but it's interesting. We've had a lot of scientific content, but I feel like what's resonated most with listeners is more when we are bringing ourselves into it. Sharing stories, whether they're related to what we're talking about scientifically or not. You just look at the Muck-Up Day episodes. They're always our most listened to, and they have very little scientific content. It's just more the two of us as sisters having banter. So I think I've learnt that as a science communicator, it's so important to really bring yourself into the messages that you're trying to put across.
Yeah, I think that's right.
You know, I think that's how to engage people. And if you're just going to talk about a study and talk about what was done and in a very sort of conference presentation way, it's less engaging, and I don't think people will be as willing to listen to that in a podcast platform. So that's been a really good lesson, and I think as we've gone on with the episodes, we've got better at doing that, Janine. I would like to think.
It's quite an intimate medium, really, and I think, yes, bringing our authentic selves was crucial, and it made it more fun for us as well.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think I could have done this podcast any other way and with any other person, Janine.
That's true. I would agree.
So, yes, I'd like to think we got better at doing that as we got along. We were always learning the whole way along, and I probably would shudder to think what some of our earlier episodes sound like. I'm not going to go back and listen to them.
I think I'll add into that. I think part of what I learned is that sometimes you've got to start something before you feel ready to actually learn on the job, right?
Yes.
Like we did get better. I think we did get better and we got more confident. I think that's why we got better, because we actually started to feel, people are actually connecting with this, so we must be doing something well. And then it felt easier.
But the whole time I felt like we had no idea what we were doing still.
Oh, yeah. But that's normal.
Yeah, that's okay. Fine. Whatever. I felt most confident in the muck-up day episodes.
So did I. Well, on that, the biggest thing that I learned through the entire podcast is that podcasting takes way, 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 way more time and energy and effort than you think.
Oh, yeah. I should have said that. That goes without saying.
And that's good. That's amazing. And I loved it. But it's really hard to keep at it and deliver good quality content when it's not your day job.
Yeah, and I know people might think that we have this huge team behind us, that's this huge operation supporting this extravagant production, but it's just the two of us.
Yeah.
And then Adrian Diary, of course, who was always there to help with sound engineering and quality and musical snippets that you've heard along the way, and you'll hear more of those in this episode. But aside from that, just the engine room of the two of us in terms of the content and pulling it all together.
That's right. And we did have an opportunity at one point to make this bigger and go a bit more mainstream, but it didn't feel right to us. We decided we didn't want to go that way. We wanted to remain independent. So I think that was still the right decision.
Yes, and I think that we would have had to take a lot away from our regular
That's right.
Our day jobs, which,
That's right.
You know, I work in research still. That is my passion. And so that wasn't an option for me.
Yeah, we both love our day jobs. That's right. So was there anything else that you learned that you wanted to share? I've got a few other things here.
I think I got all right at doing some graphic design.
You did. Yeah, you did like all of it.
I had fun doing episode tiles. Spent more time on that than I probably should have.
You did.
This is the point I'm trying to make.
I learned that I really do love podcasting and I would like to do more of it in the future, so watch this space. I learned...
Listen to this space. Listen to this channel. We'll see.
Yes, that is correct. I also learned that I am in awe of you, Aleena, at your deep knowledge of and appreciation for the scientific method. And as Aleena has alluded to, always ensuring the podcast was of the highest quality. It's much higher quality than if it was me doing it by myself, and I thank you for that, and I am in awe of you for that.
There might have been less arguments if you were doing it with yourself or someone else.
I also learned that doing a creative project together has just been such a blast, and it really helped pull me through some tough times over past years. It was like this nice little anchor point where I got to turn on the mic, have some fun, and forget about everything else, and that was awesome.
Yeah, and build a little community.
Yeah. I mean, I already knew this, but it's just relearning and relearning this over and over again, is that everything ends. Sometimes things end earlier than you thought or planned, but everything does end. So,
well, we did say at the beginning that we would die before we got through all of our episodes that were on the short list.
That's true.
And so we've maintained that.
That actually
we have
is still
upheld
true.
That. Yes. We have executed that promise.
Okay, so the next item I have on the agenda is just to share some personal highlights from the year, since you haven't heard from us all year. I travelled to Japan with my son, and it was his first time overseas, and that was a really big adventure for us. We had a lot of fun, and I ticked an item off my bucket list, which was to play with capybara, and it was as awesome as I had hoped. It was so good. And my son just finished primary school, so it's been a really big year for the family. It's been very exciting. I also like a personal highlight for me was that I was invited to speak at the Australian Parliamentary Inquiry into Perimenopause and Menopause. People might remember that I had some major surgery last year, and that was cancer preventative surgery, and part of it was removal of my ovaries, and that put me into overnight menopause, which has been, get the beeper ready, Aleena, a shit show. But I've come through it, and how have I done that? Because I have a scientific analytic mind, I can engage with research literature, I can problem solve. All of the skills I have as a scientist is what has enabled me to kind of work out what treatment I need, work out how I can actually survive this. And I'm doing really well now. But it's not really the case for a lot of women who don't necessarily have my skills and access to what I have access to. So I was very happy to speak at that inquiry because this whole situation for women in Australia and the world has to improve. 50% of people are going to go through this, and for some people it's very, very difficult. And I was happy to be involved, and there's going to be a lot of changes coming from that, and I welcome them and I look forward to it. And thank you, Aleena, for putting up with all of my breakdowns.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say it was really difficult for me. I think listeners need to appreciate that. Yeah, really rough time for me as well. No, in all seriousness, you did a great job speaking as a witness at that public hearing. I was there, of course, to support you, and you did an excellent job. So good things are to come from that, I'm sure. And also, just on my nephew, your son graduating from primary school, it makes me remember that when we started this, he was so much littler. And you remember he used to call it our radio show.
Oh,
because I don't think he quite understood what a podcast is. That's a tough concept
he knows
for
what
a
it
young
is now.
kid.
Yeah,
a radio
wants to have
show.
his own now.
Yeah, exactly. We should get him to do the editing.
You know what? In a few more years, he probably would.
He'd love it. Well,
I
my
did have
highlight-
one more. Oh, I had one more.
Okay.
But do you want to go first?
No, please continue.
This is my favourite highlight. My favourite highlight is, if people may remember that in our last episode last year, I intimated that I may try online dating.
Oh, yes.
And I indeed did. And I met someone amazing after just 2 days. Seriously. And in
2 days on the app.
2 days, on the second day, I see a profile and it mentions that this person likes nerdy facts and mentions a few of them. For example, the symbiosis of zooxanthellae bacteria and coral polyps. And I went, what? Hold up, who is this now? And then in some of the very first messages, he mentioned, without knowing anything about me and what I do, that he really likes listening to nerdy science podcasts. And yes, here we are. We are still together 1 year later, and he's wonderful, and I'm very, very, very grateful and lucky.
Yeah.
Found him.
And that's also why you've had less time for the podcast, isn't it, Janine?
Well, yes, that's true. That is true. But I would like to keep doing it. Maybe. We'll see.
Yes.
I would. I think I would have found the time, Aleena, if you had been able to also find the time.
But not to discourage anyone who tries online dating and doesn't find someone after 2 days. I think let's acknowledge that that's extremely unrealistic.
Oh, I know. No, I did so much research around what to expect. And
of course you did.
I remember reading, I don't remember my source, but it was to expect, on average, meeting in person with around 80 people to kind of find someone. So I was like, all right, I'm going in for the long haul.
Good thing you're an extrovert. Okay, so that's lovely. Are you finished now, Janine?
I am.
Are you finished telling everyone about how happy you
I
are?
am finished.
We've got a bit more and then you can skip off into the sunset.
Your turn.
Well, my highlights for the year is there's been a lot of really good professional highlights going on. I also recently travelled to Sri Lanka, which was amazing. I went to Sri Lanka for a conference. It was the conference of the International Stillbirth Alliance, which I do a lot of work with in my research in maternal and perinatal health. It was an excellent conference and Sri Lanka was incredible, amazing country. We got to travel around as well. Wonderful food, delicious tea, saw incredible animals on safari. So that was a real highlight. And on the way home, my partner and I got engaged.
Yay!
So that was a very big highlight, obviously.
Yes.
So, yeah, I'll join you, Janine, skipping off into the sunset in just a little bit. And then a real moment of personal growth, I think. I participated in, Janine, you know Spencer Tunick, the artist who takes photographs of nudes. Of large crowds of nudes doing different artistic poses in very interesting locations. So Spencer Tunick came to Brisbane to do a shot on the Story Bridge. My partner convinced me to do it. It didn't take much convincing. I just thought, why not? That sounds like fun.
Totally.
I have to say it was such an interesting experience, and to feel how quickly any kind of self-consciousness faded away once you were just in this crowd of people all in the same boat, and it just didn't matter. I reckon it was 10 seconds after stripping off. That moment of stripping off was a bit, ooh.
Yeah,
and then
totally.
as soon as the clothes hit the floor, it felt like it was just like, whatever.
Yeah.
I don't care.
Well, it's like we're all just human beings, whatever.
Exactly. We did a number of shots actually on the Story Bridge, and it was freezing because we had to be there before sunrise, well before sunrise, and it had been raining all night, and then it was very overcast during the shoot, which is excellent for photography, makes for really great photos. But the road was wet and cold, and of course, what's one of the poses we have to do? Can you all please lie down on your backs? We're just going, the road was muddy. So, yeah, we're a bit dirty after that. And then walking through parts of Howard Smith wharves naked was quite funny, especially when there were what we were calling on the day normals. Normals just out having brunch at the cafes or having a drink, just watching literally thousands of people,
How many people
in the
were
nud
there?
walking. It was 5,500.
Wow. That's awesome.
Walking through the wharves to get to the next location to shoot, which was on the floating walkway. I can't remember what it's called.
Yeah, I know that spot.
Over the river. So that was fantastic. And we get a print of one of the shots, the main shot, I guess, to be chosen sometime next year. So
Those his art is amazing. I've seen some of the other ones he's done. It's really interesting. And also with the work that I do a bit of event organising. So I just find it really fascinating how that comes together from that logistical perspective. It's fascinating to me with that many people.
there was definitely not enough portaloos for 5,500 people.
Far out. Just pop down to the river and go there. Well, yeah, so lots of highlights for the year for both of us, which has been good. I think we should do one last inner square because I got a good one.
Let's do it.
I recently, Aleena, you will be aware, got a new mobile phone. And listeners who've been with us for the long haul may remember in a very early episode, I went on and on and on about how to preserve the battery life of your phone, to maximise the lifespan of your phone. And I said, I really want to get this phone to go 5 years. Well, I did.
Oh.
I got it 5 years. And the only reason I had to update is because it stopped getting like security updates and I started having issues with like multi-factor authentication and apps and just, it was becoming not as secure a device as I require.
I also recall that you were unable to actually make phone calls. Being one of the key uses of a mobile phone.
When did that happen?
Or was it receiving them?
something, yeah. It just started malfunctioning. It was time. It was time
it's
to
upgrade. It's a bit of a deal breaker when it gets to that point.
Yeah. And I was very overwhelmed trying to choose a new device because, again, I want it to last. Oh, I don't know. There's so many things to consider now and they're very expensive. I was just very overwhelmed. And my lovely partner, he's very good at this. This is his world. He's very good at understanding all of these features. He can just, in his head, work out which would be a good option. Mm-hmm. And he was trying to tell me all these features and I'm just sitting there getting more and more overwhelmed. I don't know what to do. And he said...
you don't even know what those words are.
He said, would you like me to put this into an Excel spreadsheet for you?
True love.
So this is a combined my partner and my inner square. Because, Aleena, you all know, I think maybe for you too, Excel spreadsheets are my love language.
I love a spreadsheet.
I love a spreadsheet.
I love a spreadsheet.
It's so good.
Do you know we've talked about this. Do you know what's even better than a spreadsheet?
A pivot table.
Pivot table in a spreadsheet.
I reckon he would have done that if I'd remained confused. But anyway. So he did all of this and this was very kind and considerate, but also just so practical and helpful because then I could see it all in one place and I could compare through the columns and the rows and I could make a decision. And he included things like benchmarking data, like comparing the phones. He put in how many years of security updates they'll get. He even put in that security updates, they can start from the date the phone was released or the date you purchase it from. He got into that level of detail and then he worked out based on the number of years of security updates what the cost per year was for the device. So I could see, like, although it might cost, you know, $700, $800, $900 each year, it's only actually costing you this because it's going to last this long. It was extremely helpful.
Wow. Yeah, I've already switched off.
Oh, well, anyway, I just want to say thank you.
That is lovely.
Thank you to him for helping me. And the new phone is really good. It is such a good phone. I'm just thrilled with it. And I'm going to push it 5 or more years again. I reckon I could even go 7.
Yeah, but we're not going to say what it is because this is not a commercial podcast.
No, I'm not going to say what it is.
But I will say that I'm pleased that it's the same phone that I have.
Yeah, I know.
And I did none of that research.
Just get that one. It's really good.
Pretty basically, that was my contribution. But I feel validation that the one I have is clearly very good. Anyway, so that's great. All right, well, my inner square is I went down the rabbit hole earlier this week looking at, Janine, are you aware of the BMJ, so the British Medical Journal Christmas issues?
No.
So every year the BMJ has a Christmas issue that comes out, of course, around over the Christmas New Year period. And it's just a collection of, they say, light-hearted fare and satire. It's just funny stuff. It's still, it's nothing made up. It is still peer-reviewed.
Yes.
The studies, if it's original research, it still goes through the same method of
still rigorous.
Assessing for quality. Yes, has to be rigorous. Has to be quality, has to be clearly reported, and as I said, goes through peer review. So you've got to have a look, Janine.
I'm going to do that as soon as we finish.
That I was looking at. It's so good. Okay. Cheers, not tears, champagne corks and eye injury. There was a feature on that. Bug in a mug, are hospital coffee machines transmitting pathogens?
Oh, actually that sounds very interesting.
Festive period episodes of Doctor Who and population mortality.
Okay, I need to read this.
Association of health benefits and harms of Christmas dessert ingredients in recipes from the Great British Bake Off. They did a review and meta-analysis of studies. So they looked at all of the different ingredients that are in recipes that were featured in the Great British Bake Off and then looked at the association of those ingredients with death and disease. And they found the ingredients that were associated with reduced risk of death and disease were fruit, coffee and nuts.
Yep.
And then, this might not surprise you, the others that were associated with death and disease were alcohol and sugar.
Yeah, basically everything else.
Well, no, but of most of what they looked at, so they conclude that the recipes from the dishes in the Great British Bake Off often use ingredients that are associated with reductions rather than increases in the risk of death or disease. And get this, I love this. So they conclude, this Christmas, if concerns about the limitations of observational nutrition research are set aside, you can have your cake and eat it too. I love it.
Great.
So that's a study by Joshua Wallach and colleagues. So we'll put a link to that. And there was another one that I really loved. So this was looking at, do you remember the Monty Python skit, The Ministry of Silly Walks?
Yes.
So this
Very
study, they call it inefficient walking. They say it's called Quantifying the Benefits of Inefficient Walking, Monty Python-inspired laboratory-based experimental study. So this was by Glenn Gasser and colleagues, and they got participants to mimic the two walks that are featured in the Ministry of Silly Walks. So the Mr. Teabag's walk, so that's, what's his name, John Cleese?
Yes.
To mimic his walk, and also the walk of Mr. Pewty, which is the other guy.
Yes.
And then they measured the oxygen uptake and energy expenditure as they're doing these walks and compared them to the participants' normal walk, their usual walk.
Yes.
And they found, so basically when they're doing the Mr. Teabag walk, so this one, you know, where he's really lifting his legs.
Yeah. He puts his leg up like, points it out in front. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll put a link to the YouTube video. It's very funny.
It is very good.
So that, increased oxygen uptake and expenditure for the Mr. Teabag walk compared to their usual walk, but no difference for the Mr. Pewty walk compared to their usual walk.
Well, but wasn't Mr. Pewty questioned as to, you know, was it genuinely a silly enough walk?
It wasn't silly enough. So that's
Doesn't he say it's not particularly silly?
Exactly. And that's been scientifically backed up here by saying that it wasn't different enough to one's usual walk to increase oxygen uptake and energy expenditure.
Oh, very good.
And so I just love their conclusions. They say low efficiency walking in teabag style, requiring around 12 to 19 minutes, could increase daily energy expenditure by 100 calories. Adults could achieve 75 minutes of vigorous intensity physical activity per week by walking inefficiently for about 11 minutes per day. Had an initiative to promote inefficient movement been adopted in the early 1970s, we might now be living among a healthier society.
No.
Oh,
dear, that's funny.
So, yeah, we'll put links up to both of those studies and the whole back catalogue of the BMJ Christmas edition.
That's
They're
good.
so funny. I'm going to put this on my bucket list. I want to publish a study in the BMJ Christmas edition.
I knew you would say that.
It's very competitive.
Of course.
And you need to submit by like July that year.
Yeah.
We'll see. If anyone wants to support me in that endeavour, I'll need some funding, depending on what we do.
Oh, that's good.
Oh, good.
Yes, if you want to collaborate with Aleena or I for this, or both of us, yes, let us know. This could be a good fun. So, Aleena, what's next for you?
What's next for me is just continuing with my consulting work in maternal and perinatal health, which I really love. I post about this sort of thing a lot. So if you're interested in maternal and perinatal health, pregnancy loss, please follow me on Blue Sky or on X if you still use X. I'm trying to get away from it, but we'll see. Yeah.
And LinkedIn. Yeah.
On LinkedIn, of course. Yeah.
Very good. You're doing great stuff. It's so important and you're in your element and I love watching it. I will be continuing with my work in education. So I work at a university doing a job I love, and I also run a business where I do tutoring and learning advising, and I will continue that work. So you can connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm no longer, I think I still have an X account, but I haven't posted to that for some time. I can't remember my login password, so I don't think you should follow me there anymore.
No. Join Blue Sky. It's fun. I'm enjoying it so far.
I don't have time, Aleena.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah, but I think LinkedIn's probably the best place to find me And I've also got, as I mentioned earlier, several ideas for new content that I'd like to get involved in. But I'm keeping it close to my chest for now while it percolates. But whatever I get up to, I will definitely promote on this podcast channel. Or I might just end up using this channel to save money. We'll see what happens. Because, yes, the podcast will stay up, the website will stay up. We are committed to keeping the content available.
Yeah, and if you haven't listened to previous episodes, the back catalogue is there. So feel free to go back, with the caveat being the earlier ones might not be very good.
I think they're still okay. It's just like,
All right.
I think they're still pretty good. And I will still, on occasion, try and wrangle Aleena to come back and do more in the future. More Sister Doctor Squared. So we'll see what happens.
Yes.
Watch this space. But before we wrap up, Aleena, I just want to do one more. What can we all learn from David Bowie?
Oh, we have to. We've got to hear that music
I really want
again.
to. Exactly.
Let's go.
Aleena, I haven't shared this with you yet, but I will share it with you after the recording. I read an article featuring Brett Morgan recently. Brett Morgan is the creator of the film/documentary about Bowie, Moon Age Daydream, that I've waxed lyrical about in previous episodes.
Yes.
Which you've also seen. Mm-hmm. It's very, very good. Please go and watch that, everyone listening. And in the article, he talked about Bowie's song Changes.
Mm-hmm.
Changes, turn and face changes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And about the fact that Bowie embraced and even sought change constantly throughout his life. And I just thought this was so pertinent as we were preparing for this final little episode together.
Yeah.
Bowie was constantly changing his persona. He had so many different musical eras. He was always reinventing himself in his music. And Brett Morgan said, and I quote, Bowie embraced change because it resonated with his philosophy of life, which was rooted in transience, chaos and fragmentation. Mm-hmm. And he was always trying to make an adventure out of life.
Wow.
I would like us to try and emulate this idea as we finish up the podcast for now and we move on to our next adventures. Changes, turn and face the strange changes. Okay. Please do go watch that. It's so good, everyone.
It is good.
It's so good.
It really takes you to another world for 90 minutes to 2 hours, however long it is.
It's great.
Well, I saw it in a cinema, so the experience was even more profound.
Same. Yeah.
Oh, that's
so
a great message, Janine. Thank you for sharing
That's
that.
okay. So, yeah, and as we wrap up, we just want to say thank you. Thank you to David Astle from ABC Radio for featuring us last year, which brought on board so many new listeners. It was so great to speak with him and get in touch with so many of you. That was awesome. Thanks to Mexico.
Yeah.
Still our number one region of listeners. We still don't know what's going on.
Yeah, we reached out and New Mexico's a bit shy.
Yeah.
We don't know who you are, but thanks, Mexico.
It's really going off in Mexico, so that's great to have you on board. We're still monitoring the emails if anyone wants to get in touch to tell us how that happened.
Yeah.
And just thanks to everyone who has listened in, gotten in touch, who's bought us a coffee on Ko-fi and supported us and the podcast. It's been an absolute blast.
And huge thank you again to Adrian Diary, who made the podcast theme music and all of the David Bowie themed music that we have featured, as well as just lots of advice along the way about making a podcast and audio. I've learned a lot.
And just elevating the quality in general.
Exactly.
Yeah. And finally, I'd just like to thank you, Aleena, for being the best and most nerdiest sister I could ever hope for.
Right back at you, sis.
All right. As we used to say when we were kids, do you remember this? TTFN?
Ta-ta for now.
Yeah. Okay, stay square out there.
Stay square out there.